Hey everybody, this is Try Dying to Live here playing Kerbal Space Program. As you can see, if you look down here, version 0.18 is out. Hey, look at that moon coming on up there. It looks great. Hey, we are going to go ahead and look at the game and some of the changes, kind of explain some of the things to you. Some of it, a lot of times, is very confusing. There's not a lot of information on things sometimes, and sometimes having a visual view and representation of what's going on will help you out. On this episode, we are going to look at the VAB and the new parts and some of the information there, as well as the new action groups. In the next two, we're going to talk about docking and some of the orbital mechanic changes, which are pretty sweet. But first, we are going to get into the parts and the actions group. So it's going to be pretty exciting. You start off before they had this box right here in the front here. That's not here anymore. So you have to first pick out your command capsule. You've got 3 options of space planes. You've got 3 options of lander bits, I guess you might call them. This one right here, this lander can, I wouldn't call them lander bits. They are spaceship capsules. There we go, command pods. There we go, that's what I want to say, command pods. This one's new. It's designed for landing like a rocket on the moon. So it's pretty handy there. We've also got ourselves 3 brand new probes, and these are unmanned vehicles. So these are vehicles for the first time that are unmanned. And you may think to yourself, wow, that's alright, that looks pretty cool. But it also is really neat. Let's see here, there's a standard one-man pod. They're very small, and what that lets you do is have a smaller weight. You don't have to sacrifice your Kerbals to go and explore a new land for the first time. You don't have to have a massive rocket. You don't have to have tons of fuel to get these little probes out there. And so that's pretty exciting. Let me go ahead and hit new, and we're going to kind of look at some of the other things. I'm going to pull out this guy right here. Now, one thing you may notice is that there are a lot more tabs. You've got pods, which we had before. You can now, as you saw, stack multiple pods together. Pretty sweet. So you can actually have multiple vehicles on a single mission. Let's get this back down here so we can see it. We have propulsion. We have control. So propulsion's like our fuel, our rockets, jet engines. Control is our SASs, our CSs. Structure is parts that really don't do anything. Aerodynamic, parts that you need air to affect them. Essentially, that's what that means. Utility parts, important things like lander legs and parachutes, and some new sciencey things which are pretty cool. But let's get to our propulsion. There are a few small changes, and by small I mean there's some small parts. You can see this little guy and you're like, what is that thing for? Well, remember those probes from before? It is the perfect size. Let me pull up a probe here real quick. It's the perfect size, come on, to put a probe under, or to push a probe around. So those are pretty handy for that kind of a thing. They're pretty small, so you don't want to use them for anything that's manned, but they're pretty handy nonetheless. Also, additionally, fuel tanks. If you look, they now have right. I can't do it. I'm pointing my finger. If you look at the resource, it says liquid fuel. It also says oxidizer. Now, what that is, when you have a rocket and it's a liquid fuel rocket, solid fuels essentially do this too, but they do it differently. You need oxygen to have a fire. Okay, that is one of the 3 things you need to have a fire. You need a fuel, a fire, or excuse me, you need a fuel, a heat source, and something to combust. So you get your oxygen and your fuel together. And so in a large, like a real rocket, they have both tanks for air, excuse me, I should say oxygen, liquid oxygen, and also their fuel, which may be hydrogen or kerosene or something else, whether it be exotic or not. And so now you have air, or you're bringing oxygen up also. Now, if you look at our space plane parts, they don't have air because you're expected to get the air from the atmosphere. This is going to be a big change. So if you ever use space plane parts, which is kind of crazy, as rocket parts, it won't work anymore. Now what you're asking is, well, does this mean that I can fire a jet engine off and use rocket fuel and use the air from this to fire the jet engine? You think you could, but you can't. You can't. All right. So basically what it means is you can't use a jet engine at all on Eve. So This here, that doesn't work. You still have to have an air intake. Now you can put an air intake on here and this will work, but you can't say land on Eve and make that work. If you've seen my Eve videos, that may make a little more sense. Let's see here. Moving on. I already showed you this guy. This guy's new. He's longer, which is pretty nice. There's also a large one, which is longer, which is also quite nice. There's also some nice music, which is soothing to me. There's RCS fuel, which is, you know, the same thing as before, but still pretty handy. There's a new RCS thing, which is pretty nice. There's that. That looks pretty good. There's a weird bug in the game where if you attach something to the door, sometimes you can't get it off without taking it. Come on, just that. Oh, come on. There we go. You see that? I was like right through it. There's a new engine thingy, downward pointy thingy, great for moon landings, things of that sort. This right here, this one has changed. In the previous version, this lasted for 30 seconds and provided extra lift. Now it lasts about 55 seconds and provides the same amount of lift as this guy per second, I should say. New fuel tank. Also, I believe the arrow spike has been nerfed. I haven't confirmed this, but I heard talk that it was going to be nerfed because it was more overpowered than they intended to be. It's supposed to be a very powerful engine, but it was more than they intended it to be. Let me see here. There's some changes, like this little short guy here. He's changed. He looks pretty good. I like it a lot. I like the gold look in it. Also, the fuel lines, they have been moved here, which makes a lot of sense because when you're moving with fuel and things like that, same place. It's not under structural things anymore. So that is this. And so we'll move on to the next thing. The next thing is the control group. The control group is basically SAS module. So here's your large ASAS. Here's your small ASAS. Here's your regular small SAS without the advanced features. RCS, linear RCS. Avionics package, which is your basically an SAS for space planes. All in here, pretty simple, nice small thing. Until you get to structural, and you get a nice new chunk of parts, which are all pretty exciting. You've got some new stack separators, I guess they call them. This one's very small. This one is also small. Let me find the large one. Where's the large one at? There's the big one. So you got some decouplers, which are pretty handy. Here's a structural pylon, which is not a decoupler. Yes, this is a decoupler. And this guy here, which is not a decoupler. You got a new... Let me put an engine on here so you can see it. We've got a new radial decoupler, which is pretty nice because it holds your rocket out farther, which is pretty handy. However, I do not believe... Oops, that you can put 8 on a... Oh, you can put 8 on a small stack. That's pretty handy. So, can you put the engines on it, though? Hey, it looks like you can. That's pretty handy. So, instead of where before I was stacking 2 on top of each other, now I can just use the 1. That's nice. I like that a lot. Anyways, you get some various parts that don't really do anything. You've got this guy, which is designed for... you put your docking ports on that, which is pretty handy. So if you want to put a lot of docking ports up, that's nice. Also, you got some nice structural things. That guy's a little tiny thing. That's a little tiny thing. This is actually proper size. This thing's huge. I want to get rid of that. Is this normal size? There we go. Oops. Get rid of that. So this is pretty handy. So you can put a... oops, that's too big. Let's do 4. So you can put, you know... various things. So if I wanted to, I could take, let me find, go over to utility, let me find a lander leg. Where's my lander leg? So I go over here and I can put a lander leg on the outside if I wanted to make it. And so now it's kind of like a wide thing. So if you want to, basically if you want to land on rocky terrain, it gives you more area to land on. So it gives you lots of really cool things. I'd like to see a few larger structural pieces, like that's tiny, this is tiny. It's like, what do you know, I mean, it worked great for probes, and it's important for probes because we'll talk about this in a minute, but probes need a lot of electricity. They use electricity. Their main propulsion is going to be electricity based. And so it's going to be important to have, you know, the ability to put solar panels everywhere, because that's one of the main things that you're going to want to do with these things is put solar panels on them. You know, that's kind of why they're there. But they're pretty handy for that kind of stuff, and also they just kind of look cool, make your space station look cool. Nothing else is terribly new on this page here. There's a few other things that, you know, a large to small adapter, things like of those nature. But nothing terribly new there. We go on to the aerodynamics. This is basically anything that requires air to use or is air related. That looks good. No. So basically, the point of this stuff is it's either wings or control surfaces. Some of this is a little confusing because I'm pretty sure this is a control surface and this is a control surface, but this is a wing. But you can't really, there's nothing really that lets you tell the difference between the two. So it's kind of confusing in that regard. And so it's kind of like, how do I tell the difference? What's going to flex and what's not going to flex? You know, it's going to adjust with what's going on. So that kind of throws you. But also in this version, they have air intakes. And the reason why they have air intakes is because you have to have oxygen to fire a jet engine, and so you have to have an intake on your jet engine in order for your rocket, or I should say your jet engine to burn. So for example, this would work, assuming this was actually fuel. I don't think that's fuel. I think that's just a structural part. This would work, however, this would not work because you have to have air. And the more air intakes you put on your ship, the higher altitude it's going to be able to work, because it's going to be able to gather air at a very large amount of air. Even though there's going to be not very much air in there, it's going to be pulling in so much air that it's going to make up for the lack of oxygen up high. And so that's a neat little feature. Let's go back to aerodynamics, and I think that's about it. Some of these things probably should be structural. This guy and this guy don't do anything. This doesn't do anything. That doesn't do anything. That doesn't do anything. You know, this doesn't do anything. I guess it's just for looks. And I guess it really probably does belong in this group because it sort of is like under the same concept, but it's not the same function because they don't actually do anything. There's no lift or actual... Actually, that does have a small air intake, doesn't it? That one doesn't do anything, but this one does provide a little bit of an air intake, so that's kind of cool. I didn't know that. Okay, I take it back. This all can stay. It all can stay. But anyways, one of the big changes you need to know is you have to have air intakes on the new rockets, or on your new space planes. There's no more getting away with it. And how much air is important as well. Alright, let's go over to utility. This is one of my most excited things, the things that I'm most excited about, I should say. We've got a few things, and these are all basically the electronics-based things. So first off, let's talk about some of the parachutes. Excuse me. So we have our normal two parachutes, large and small. Now there's also a side-mounted parachute, which is quite handy. I don't need that many parachutes. Let's get rid of most of those. One more. So basically, before we would take one of these guys and we'd shove it on the side. Well, now that doesn't work. It only fits on the top. So this side-mounted parachute is handy for, you know, if you're using the top for, say, a docking port or a light or something like that. And we'll get into those in a second here. But it's a very handy thing, and I usually basically just use these almost, you know, exclusively now. The other thing is there is now this parachute here, which is really big for this one here, but this is actually a drogue chute. Basically, what this does is it opens up higher up, but it doesn't slow you down very quickly at all. And you say, well, that doesn't make much sense. Why wouldn't I have something that wouldn't slow me down very much? Well, this is like a primary chute. Or a parachute you'd fire before your main parachute to slow you down so that when your main parachute fires, it doesn't rip your ship apart. Because if your deceleration forces are too great, it may cause damage to your ship, i.e. death and dismemberment. So if you're able to slow yourself down prior to the firing of your main chute, you won't experience the high G's, and you won't, you know, rip yourself apart and, you know, send your Kerbals to a fiery, sudden thump of a death. All right. So we carry on here, and we're starting to get into some of the exciting electronics. Okay, so first we're going to talk about the new engine, which is this xenon-based ion electric engine. It takes two things. It takes electricity and it takes xenon. Xenon is a gas, if you didn't know. So let's take our xenon gas. We'll put it on the bottom here. Now, it's a small engine. It doesn't provide very fast thrust, I should say, but it's sort of like where is it at? This guy here, this atomic quote quote atomic rocket engine. It doesn't work fast, but it works very efficiently. It'll provide a lot of delta V, but it'll take a long time. So it's great for interplanetary missions. So it takes two parts. Let's go back over the utility. It takes two parts. It takes a xenon tank at least, and also the engine. But it's also going to take some electricity. Now, when we launch, you'll notice that we have a new resources tab. You hit this resources here, and you can say we have electric charge, which is coming from this pod here, and it's got 50 units. And we also have xenon gas, which is 700 units. So I'm going to go ahead and fire my engine, and you can see I'm running out of electricity. Now, I'm not using hardly any xenon gas because I've not even had much throttle up, but I'm out of electricity. And so it's a very good engine, but we have to keep it a constant flow of electricity. Now, this engine here is the biggest user of electricity in the game, but it's not the only user of electricity in the game. We can also add, let's go back to the VAB. We can also add lights. We can also add, there's these scientific things. These are lots of really cool scientific things. These four actually do measurements. These don't do anything. They just look cool. But we have to be able to power what we're doing. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pull that off here. I'm going to put is this the right fuel tank? Yeah. Oh, that's not the one. I'm going to put a small fuel tank on it just for spacing, so we can put stuff on it. Actually, I'm not going to use fuel tank. Let's go over to structural. There we go. That doesn't actually do anything. It's got no weight. Well, it's got low weight to it, I should say. So we're going to use this as something to base off of. So let's go to our utility. Now, one thing that we can do, obviously, is we can use solar panels. So we've got quite a few options. We have the stick-on variety. You stick it on and you're done. You've got the unfolding variety. So you've got 4 different types that unfold, which are pretty handy. Get rid of those. And you have a large unfolding one, which is a pretty cool one. Let me balance that out so that we don't fall over. Whoops. There we go. So, and then this will actually unfurl all the way out, and become a solar panel. And so we're actually going to look at that, but we're also going to shove a couple things on here. Let's grab a light. I will point it down. So that this is a spotlight, and we also have a floodlight. So these are going to provide both light, but they're going to do it very differently. And what else? There's also this atomic generator type thing, which provides 1 unit of electricity a second, whereas this actually provides 14 units of electricity a second when the light's out. So this is sort of like when it's dark out and you need electricity, you might want to use one of these for backup. But these are going to be your main source of electricity. These guys right here. I'm going to put a couple of these on here just to show you what they look like. And finally, you got batteries. Now, you get it in 2 forms. You got one form, which is these stick-ons. You just stick it on the side. These both all hold 100. So right now, I've got one on the front and one on the back. So you say 100, 200, and plus 50. So we've got 250 units of storage here. And we can stick a bunch of those on here. Or we could just take our battery pack, this guy right here, which sticks right in there. And that's going to hold 500. We could put multiple together. So I could actually stick another one there. Alright, so let's go ahead and launch this rocket. Alright, let's look at this. So let's start unfolding some of these things. We've got, well, first, actually, let's turn our lights on. I press U, turn my lights on. Woohoo! Look at them lights. That looks pretty good. Let me go ahead and fire my rocket. Let's see how we're doing on fuel. So we're not actually producing any power. We're just sucking it right out of there. And we're using, we've got 1,050 units of power. 1,000 from these two, and 50 from here. And we're going through it pretty fast. But we have resources now, so we can actually, have power, which is nice. but we're going to run out eventually. So let's start unfolding some panels. This 14.5 tells me how much I'm using a second. So let's see here. This guy's out. It's daytime, so we're going to have some power. And now it's down to 12, so it's pretty good. So it's not enough to recharge our batteries, but it's, you know, it's enough to keep it from running down instantly, I should say. There we go. So that's down to 10. That's still not enough. Let's bring out the big boys. Let's get them both going at the same time so we don't tip over. There we go. Keeping it balanced. And you can see they're actually turning toward the sun, which is a really cool feature. The sun's there. So everything's turning toward the sun. And now it says -9. So we're actually gaining electricity. And so you can see all of our command pods gaining electricity, which is pretty nice. Now we're still burning up xenon gas, but it's quite slowly. And so if we wanted to have more fuel, we could do that. But this also lets us to, you know, that's kind of a neat little feature there. Now it's not enough to take off by any means, but it's enough to correct yourself while in orbit. So that's pretty handy. And you might also notice that you know, these things are rather large, and they're also quite fragile. Which means that if you launch with them extended, or you bump into them, they will shatter into 1 billion pieces and be quite messy. So, something to keep in mind. Let's go on back. Excuse me. Let's go on back. VAB. So, let's see. What else do we have? Let's go back to utility. I think that's pretty much everything except for docking. Let's get rid of some of this stuff everywhere. Let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this. And this. All right. So we've got some docking parts, which are pretty cool. You've got 2 basic sizes. One is large. There's our large. One is small. They both transfer electricity, oxidizer, fuel, and RCS fuel. But only the larger one can do a direct transfer of Kerbals. However, right now in point 18, you cannot transfer Kerbals without an EVA. So right now, either one doesn't matter. This guy looks like he should be in an Explosion comic, like a Cyanide and Happiness type thing. But anyways, so you can use either one. I mainly just use the large one. This one's just kind of nice to use if you've got, you know, maybe a probe or something like that, or you don't care to transfer Kerbals, you just want to attach things together. Chances are, however, eventually you'll want to transfer Kerbals, so you know you want to do that. Now you've got this part here. You also have a neat little thing here. Whoops, put that on top there. This is exact same thing as the large one. However, it sits in a nice little protective nose cone that you can then toggle and open up and dock on the nose, which is pretty nice. There's also, let's see here, where is it at? This guy right here, which is the Clampotron, which I put on like a fool. There we go. And what this does is it actually has a docking clamp inside, and you can right-click on it. You say, you know, open it up or unlock it, and it'll open up, and the docking clamp will extend, so you can have it look like a rocket while it takes off, be all aerodynamic looking, and then you can, you know, have your docking port. Alternatively, what's nice is you grab this guy here, you go crazy with it, you have your huge space station. You know you want to build your space station. Who doesn't want to build their space station? You get your Clampotron for, oops, come on. And ideally, you stick it to the side. Did I grab a junior? Ideally, oops, come on. Can't even grab it. Oops, come on. There we go. Ideally, you stick it to the side. However, this part's got a weird glitch where it doesn't like to actually let anything stick to it. So that's kind of a weird thing. And you also see that it like disconnects your 4-way attach. Like it's like, come on, do 4-way, and then it's like, no. So, yeah, see it disconnected that, but that's okay. You can put one at a time on, I guess. Anyways, that's a nice little feature. It's a little buggy, but you know, that's all right. Or if you want, just shove a bunch on there. You know, do your 4-way clamp. Then just stick that on there. Bam. So there you go. Anyway, so that's docking. Docking's pretty simple. We're going to work on that in the next video. So we're not going to get into that now. You have to watch the next video, which will be pretty cool. Because we're going to actually have I have a space station in flight right now. And we're going to go up and we're going to add another part to it. And we'll look at it. We're going to talk about it. Talk about what I learned while I was doing it. And working on it. And what I'd like to see, you know, changed. What I would have done differently and things like that. And some tips and hints. Finally, we got these things here. I'm going to show you how to use them. Oops, I don't need that many. Just slap a bunch of these guys on here. Slap, slap, slap. This guy and this guy. And I had trouble with it falling off once before. So okay, we've got all of our parts here. And they both survived. So let's do this. Let's toggle this guy. And toggle this guy. Looks cool. Got a satellite dish. It's like a flower opening up. That looks pretty cool. This guy here, he extends out. So these two don't do anything, but they look cool. These, however, do something. I just said do. You're correct. All right. So let's see here. We got to enable them. Now they do take electricity. See, it's taking a tiny bit of electricity, but it does. We can see it's 19 degrees Celsius, so it's not terribly uncomfortable here. We've got our gravity detector. It should say 98.1 meters per second, because we're at almost sea level. We're just above sea level, and so it's showing us gravity properly. And it's taking a little bit of electricity. We've got our accelerometer. Accelerometer measures G's. It's measuring 1 G, and that is the force of gravity. So you can measure 1 G as being, you know, standing still at sea level. If you are falling, this will actually show 0 Gs or 0.01 Gs because you actually have some wind resistance. But so if you have 1, anyways, that's just whatever. Anyways, and then we have a barometer, which is at 1 atmosphere, which is I guess that's the unit of measurement, which is, you know, the pressure of the air at sea level. So any higher tells you that, you know, you have there's more air, more density of air. Less is less density of air. So if you're out in space, it'll say, hey, you're in a vacuum. Or as you fly up, it'll say, hey, you're less and less air and less air. But this would be handy if I say, I'm going to send a probe to Eve. I'm going to land it on Eve. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my accelerometer, which is off, and I'm going to say, oh, I've got, you know, there's more gravity here. I can see the G meter. I can look at my gravity and say, oh, the value is, you know, 11 point whatever, and I go, oh, that's even more. And I look at my barometer and I go, oh, it's at 3. It's 3 times as much. I know that I cannot assume that I can take off from Eve, sort of like I did before. Anyways, so that is an overview of all the parts. I missed one part, which is, I just remember now, which is there's a part that you can actually stow your Kerbals in. It's not a command center. It's just a stowaway place for Kerbals. And I'll actually show you that real quick. I know, there's just so many new parts they added. It's hard to keep up with them all. Let's see here. Is it structural? It is not structural. Is it utility? Yes, it is. It's this hitchhiker storage container. It's very large, but you take your Kerbals out of here, and you fly them in EVA, and they can sit in here, so you can have like a big party or powwow. That's all. I think it holds up to 4. Yeah. So, how do we store any 4 Kerbals in orbit without any provisions for return? Sounds great. Anyways, I am now going to show you guys the action groups. So let's build ourselves. Let's actually go back here. Let's build ourselves a simple rocket. But I'm going to be a bit of a scaredy cat. You see, I am terrified that I can't find anything in this new version, by the way. Nope. I'm terrified that my Kerbal, I'm terrified that he's going to die a horrible death, because look, I'm going to put this giant okay, it's not really a giant tank. I'm going to put this tank here. What's the difference between these two? What is the difference between those two? There's another engine here. This one, does it vector? Is it gimbal? So you got this. Oh, okay. This is the old. Okay, because they look different. Okay, this one does not gimbal. This one does gimbal. There we go. All right. We're gonna put a gimbaling engine. I'm afraid that my rocket's just gonna have a terrible, terrible accident, and then my Kerbals are gonna die. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually put these guys on top here, and I'm gonna go over to this action group here, and I'm gonna do an abort. All right, just in case something bad happens. And in this abort, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna click on this guy here, and I'm gonna say decouple. You gotta break that apart. This guy here, I want you to shut down the engine. This here, I want you to activate this engine, and since they're the same engine, they'll both activate. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so that's what I wanted to do. We won't fire a parachute because these will be firing. But in case something bad happens, that's what I want it to happen. Now I'm going to have a custom version. And my custom, this is not like, oh, I'm terrified something bad is going to happen. I just want to fire all this stuff at the same time, and I don't want to mess around with this. So I'm going to hit this guy here. I'm going to say, I want you to activate these two. Make sure I got them both. And I want you to go ahead and then the number 2, then I want to decouple. So I want to fire these and then decouple. Why? Just because I can. So I've got a custom 1. I got a custom 2. Actually, it doesn't show that I have custom 1. Activate engine. It is custom 1. And then I've got an abort. All right. So let's go ahead and launch our ship. All right. Let's launch our ship. And now suddenly I'm feeling an overwhelming sense of panic. So I'm going to push backspace, and you can see there that engine stopped. It took off. We decoupled, and those fired. All right. So that's kind of a cool thing. I mean, and now I can hit my parachute. There we go. And my parachute, just go through my cycle. Parachute. Great. So let's restart that flight. So now we can have a system abort, which is so much nicer than before, where you were just smashing the spacebar as many times as you can. So let's do this again, and we're going to use our control group 1 and 2. By the way, to abort, the key binding, the default key binding for abort is backspace, and then for the control groups, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever. 0, I think, all through 1 through 0. So let's fire our ship, and I'm going to go ahead and stop my engine, and then I'm going to use my 2 control groups. So I'm going to do 1, which fires those, and 2, which separates. So if I wanted to say, one thing you might use this for is instead of rearranging your or I should say it's over here, your stacks, these guys here. Yeah, you should chop that in. The parachute. So instead of rearranging this all the time, you can just be like, set up control groups and say fire all these things. You can do different things. You can do say, oh, I've got an emergency, or I'm going too fast, or I don't have enough, or just different things. Besides just abort, that you can do. You can toggle things together, like you can toggle your landing gear and your lights together, so that when you drop your landing gear, your lights turn on. So I can actually show you that real quick. It's been a long night. I was up till 4 a.m. last night trying to learn all the different ins and outs of the game so we could do good videos. So let me grab my lander legs. Oops. Should probably grab more than one lander leg. Here's my lander legs and my lights. So here's my floodlights. Then we go over to action group. And I'm going to go to landing gear. And so my landing gear, obviously I'm going to lower my legs. Actually, I should toggle my legs. And these guys here, I'm going to toggle my lights. Alright? So whenever I hit my landing gear, it's going to turn these lights on. But actually, let me go back here. Let me grab another set of lights. So I'm going to put these other lights on here. Click launch pad and proceed. And so I'm going to show you this, is that it'll just fire these lights, but not these lights. But I can still fire all the lights. So if I zoom in here. So if I press U, give it a second, U, all the lights turn on. You can see them all on. U, they turn off, okay? If I press G, oh, they didn't turn on. What is that? What is that, game? You should have turned on. G. There we go. They were just not ready yet. All right, let me turn these off real quick. Off. 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 All right. Wait till they cycle all the way down. Then we'll try it again. 1 Mississippi, 2. I can't. Just go. No. There you go. I guess it had to be pushed twice. Whatever reason. Anyways, ideally, you could do that, but obviously these ones didn't turn on here. And now they're all on. And now they're all off. And now they're all on. You could do that if you wanted to. You could do it separately. But that's some of the things you can do with that. I got to assign it to a control group. Oops. You could assign it to a control group if you wanted to, or whatever. Did I just start my parachute off? Oh no! Edson! Edson! Oh! Should have used a drogue chute. Anyways, I hope this was helpful. Gave you some insight into what the new features are, how to use them. I'm gonna as soon as I'm done with this video, I'm gonna make another video, and so it should be up shortly after this video. And this next video is going to be on docking, how to do it, how to build your own awesome space station. Yes! See you guys next time. Thanks for watching.